Are we live? Yes, we are. Okay, so hopefully, if everything's working, I should be live with you all now.
Yep.
I'm with My Faith Unfolded. Can you hear? Can we all hear each other? Are we all alright?
Everything's working.
I can hear myself on the YouTube. Um, can you hear me? Can you hear yourself? Are we all good?
I'm gonna mute the tab and listen through the broadcast.
Fantastic. Okay, so bit of context. Obviously, it's been a bit of time
As
since.
well.
What? Sorry. What did you say?
It's echoing in the broadcast as well.
Oh no, is it you or me?
That's a good question.
Um, let me turn this on. Let's see. What can I? Oh yeah, gosh, it is. It's yeah, I can hear that now. That's you. That's your microphone. It sounds completely normal coming through my setup. I have no idea how to actually. I've got echo cancellation ticked. Um, I don't actually know. What are you using headphones like I am, or are you using like
I'm
a
using an
speaker or
external
something?
microphone and headphones.
External microphone and headphones. So it's the headphone. So my sound's coming through your headphones, and then your microphone is what like is it built into the laptop or is it like a speaker one?
I think you would describe it as a speaker one.
Huh. Then I don't actually know how. Maybe you can turn your volume down, and
Hmm.
then that would reduce the amount of sound that's sort of replaying or looping over again.
Mhm.
That is really bizarre. I don't quite know why it's doing that, but
One, two. One, two. Still echo.
still echoing. How frustrating. I mean, worst come, I can always switch my headphones out if that's going to be an issue. But
I'd give it to you, but it might be me. I don't know how it would be me though.
yeah, give me a second. I'll go and switch these out. I'll get a different pair. Give me one moment. Entertain the guests whilst you're here.
Oh boy. Wait. While they're gone, let me check the YouTube broadcast, see if we're still echoing. Okay, the echo's gone. Interesting. Very interesting. So it's definitely not me. I don't know why it was echoing. The way we started this out, there was no echo. I don't know why it just appeared. Until then, I guess we're gonna wait and let this get fixed, and then I guess we'll start. I don't really know how this conversation is gonna go. I have an idea, but this is gonna be a very, very interesting chat. Kind of nervous, not gonna lie. But I think it'll be productive. Not really too heavily into politics, but depending on the questions. I'm clear now too. Yeah, so we'll just have to figure this out as we go along. Very odd. Very odd. Because I don't understand why it would be echoing. Okay, you're back. You are still muted.
Hello, can you hear me now? How do I
One, two,
sound?
three. It's a
Any
very
echo?
quiet echo. Very quiet.
A very quiet echo. And how do I sound?
I hear it on the broadcast.
You can hear it on broadcast still.
I don't think I can.
Okay, fantastic. Um, and if you can hear me and I can hear you and the echo's not too bad, I reckon we can actually get started now. I reckon
Yeah.
we'll be not so bad. Hello to Pinjas in the chat as well. Right. Okay, so where were we? My Faith Unfolded is some of I literally came across yesterday actually on Q stream and sort of through that making Hell Nervous's stream. And given that you were on there and in somewhat of a disagreement with them, or coming from a different perspective, I thought it would be interesting to have a little chat because it turns out online there's a lot of quite right wing religious folk. There's a lot of people with some very interesting, and by interesting I mean quite vitriolic and conservative perspectives in the world that do
That's
so
fair.
under the name of sort of Christianity and religion and such. And I think that it's interesting because we forget that Christian as a term is quite a broad one, and there's a lot
Yep.
under it. So I thought, why not chat to someone that presumably has a different perspective than a lot of them. I hand the floor to you. Do you want to introduce yourself, My Faith Unfolded, and give us a little intro to yourself?
If I were to describe myself, I would say that I am a Christian Minecraft YouTuber. I run a Minecraft server with a bunch of like fellow Christians and friends and even non-Christians, and I have our own Discord server. We chat, hang out, have fellowship. Right now I can't stream. My stuff's down, so I'm not doing much at the moment, but I hope to get back to that. And I think that's a pretty good intro. As you said, Christian's a broad term, so there can be a lot of beliefs under that, and I believe a lot of them feel like a lot of the right wing is correct when it comes to Christianity, but there is also a lot of hatred and, as many would describe it, bigotry when it comes along with religion and topics similar to it.
Right. Okay. Correct in what way, if you mind me asking? Like
Well,
what
that's a
sort
good
of
question.
what area?
Hmm. Not
Like
really
what?
correct. I just believe that Christianity would fall under a somewhat right wing in some situations, is more so what I'm referring to. But I can only think of one example, and I kind of don't want to bring that up, just kind of reasons.
Okay. Well, maybe we can touch on that. Another point or a bit later or something. But
Yeah.
um, I suppose the things that we can say, like, there's always you can construe through various lenses any sort of political leaning based on what quotes you want to take from certain parts of religion, right?
Yes.
Like as we said a second ago, Christianity is a broad church. There's many denominations. There's many different interpretations. You might even argue every person's religion is unique because every person's unique, right? Like two people are going to have the same
That's an
the
interesting
same
stance.
text in front of them and interpret it differently. But from where I stand, as someone sort of, with I'm not like a devout follower, but I've been to church, I've seen and read a decent amount, I'd say. The core parts of, like Jesus and what Jesus did, and the sort of core elements of Christianity, from as I understand it, have a fairly large contradiction with what I mean. Right wing is another sort of very broad label, but on the whole, the principles of I don't know, being conservative, being in favour of hierarchical structures and capitalist, chase profit and accumulate wealth and stuff, and those principles to me seem fairly at odds with the way that Jesus went about his life and sort of how Jesus encouraged his followers to be, i.e., being charitable and being merciful and sort of considering that every person is a child of God and should have a place in society. Like, would you say you share that
I completely
understanding of
agree
that?
with that. Yes.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, and what so you can sort of maybe see my confusion when you say that it perhaps a lot more of it fits under a right wing sort of
Yeah,
perspective
which
because
is why I
in
kind
my
of
mind.
backtracked on it, because I only had one example in mind when I said that. I was like, eh. And it's a really controversial one, which is why I don't want to go into that.
Okay, we don't have to touch that. I'm kind of glad that you you walked it back. I mean, because I sort of think. I mean, one of the issues is, as you sort of hinted at, left and right aren't terms which are sort of neutral and readily accepted. Like a lot of people will agree or disagree with the same things, but not like the actual labels left and right. And whilst I'll sort of sit here and say, yeah, I'm quite left wing, I definitely do think the labels have some value. A lot of people are a bit reticent to actually come forward and say, yes, I have left wing opinions or I have right wing opinions because of the almost anti politics, the sort of dissatisfaction with the political era we're in has made a lot of people discoloured to the idea. So whilst I can sort of see the reluctance to use the terms and such, and why someone might say, well, it's a more right wing thing. I think it is important to point to the very sort of simple, I don't know, like teachings and stuff that Jesus did that would sort of lend you to believe, okay, well, hang on a minute, someone that says love thy neighbour maybe isn't going to be in favour of handing $1 trillion to corporation XYZ and letting them trample over the rest of the planet and such.
That reminded me of a verse. I really want to memorize more verses because I'd have to take a minute to look it up.
I mean, memorising verses is good, right? But like, I think we can still, we're not. It's not like we're in a theology a lesson as such. We can sort of take.
But it would have like backed up your point here.
Yeah, sure. Like, I mean, we can still you can share your screen if you'd like to pull up like a specific reading or something. But we know the story of Jesus and we know what is being referred to when for the most part, like the sort of common knowledge and such, like is there. I think with that.
Because Jesus was very against materialism.
Yeah, like the idea that you should have tons and tons of commodities and items and just things is one that he definitely spoke out against, right? Like, the man went into temples and churches and said, well, hang on a minute, why have you got all this gold and silver when,
You've turned my father's house into a den of thieves, and he starts flipping tables.
Exactly. Like, I think there's clearly quite bits that are clearly being sidelined by a lot of right-wing religious organisations and just right-wing sort of people in general for a specific purpose. I think that in my mind the importance is less in the like specific, okay, well, we have to this says exactly this, and more in the sort of wider the lesson that if you, I always see it like an English text, right? Like you're sort of trying to analyze it. The lesson you can extrapolate from his time to now is, hey, why are you hoarding so much stuff when there's so many problems in the world? Like, why are you as a human being not helping your fellow human being when there's there's tons of resources, but they're not being shared to the extent that everyone can enjoy food and a house and healthcare and such. And so there is then a flashpoint with a lot of right-wing thought that dismisses those needs in favour of market structures, or and as Eve just said, the materialistic. How much can I actually own myself? How much power can I enjoy over others?
Something it reminds me of what you just said is I believe there's just a lot of idolatry of Donald Trump. That's something that reminded me of that. Looking at the right-wing side of things, there's just a lot of people that have like flags of Trump and memorabilia of Trump, and I just believe that's more so idolatry, and there's people actually worshiping Donald Trump, which is interesting. So it's very
100%.
odd. Taking a drink of my water, but that's what it reminded me of.
Yeah, well, 100%. I mean, for one, the words "false idol" that's sort of flashing across my mind when you bring up that. But no, you're 100% right. There is that. The placement of Trump above all. It's what Trump God America is the slogan, right? Like that's the the thing. But I think it's important to make the connection to several other sort of areas that overlap with this conservative adoption of religion. Fascism, obviously, the placement of the hierarchy above all sees, your charismatic cult-like leader, your dictator almost, the person in charge who has the ultimate power to decide because they are the best and top of the society. That's Trump, right? The reason they adore him so is because they've embraced this and because he is the vessel for which the social bigotries and discriminations and power can be transferred to them over the other, the groups they dislike, be it race, sexuality, gender, disabled people, nationality, all these different hierarchies they can sit on top of through a movement that Trump spearheads or is a key figure in, they can deal with sin. And unfortunately, religion then becomes another tool to this, right? Like they believe that their belief in their version of Christianity gives them superiority to others. And whereas Jesus believed, or Jesus's sort of point was that you're spreading the word of God because all life is valuable and you should be helping others.
To be
They
the greatest
stopped.
in the kingdom of heaven, you must be the least.
Well, another good quote, right? But like, they believe that their belief is giving them more power in a hierarchy, right? They believe that, okay, well, we believe in these correct Christian ideas, but we've decided, therefore we are above, everyone else who doesn't believe, and
I had a
that includes
similar
other.
conversation with someone recently,
Oh,
talking
that's very
about
nice.
how pastors or deacons or bishops or whatever you want to call them, all of those titles, they are all like shepherd, they mean teacher, they mean servant. And so many people in churches or otherwise have elevated these titles to make them something more than they are. And they're boasting about, oh, I'm a servant, which is what it means. But they're saying, I'm a pastor, I'm a deacon, I'm a bishop. And that's a conversation I recently had with someone. I just don't
Sounds good.
see how it
Yeah.
works.
Yeah, it sounds like an interesting one, and I think there's another really like important connection there, right? Like you've got the religious leader who ultimately is supposed to be just someone that is more well versed in the scripture and a confident speaker, but through the sort of right wing hierarchies and such, this is then morphed into a powerful position over others where. Even though, as you've just said, they're supposed to be just
I
a
wouldn't
servant
even
of
say
God.
a right wing like lens. It can be both sides, I believe, where
Well,
it's morphed into
I
something
guess that's
more.
where where we can bring our conversation to. But the reason I would say right wing is because the whole sort of point, if you sort of distill it down, of left wing politics and left wing discourse, is to break down these inequalities and these to say, okay, why have we got a structure that has some people boasting more power than others? Why is there an inequality, discrepancy? And then evaluating it and seeing, okay, can we make this fairer? Can we evaluate this rationally? Does this hierarchy need to exist? And in many, many cases across society, the answer is no. There's no reason Group X should be enjoying more power than Group Y. And so the reason I would say that it maybe isn't across the board, but it's not like like the reason that we're saying this is a right wing strategy. Oh, hello. Oh, I'm back. Good.
Yeah.
Is because the whole point of what Jesus was saying, as I understand it, is that as you just said, you're all equal unto God. You're all God's children, and such.
Yep.
Whereas, as you've said, people, and it's predominantly these are sort of American structures and in mega churches and such, but it's as you've said in many other places as well. They put themselves atop. They say, yes, I'm the religious leader XYZ. I am priest of this dominion and such, then giving themselves financial power, economic power, cultural power.
Yep.
They're influential in more ways than just being the head of the church, and thus are able to teach an interpretation of a religion that maintains several hierarchies.
I would argue prosperity gospel would be one of them.
What was that? Sorry, your microphone went a bit tinny then.
I would argue that the prosperity gospel would be one of those.
It's sorry, you sound. I don't know how it sounds on the video, but you sound a bit like a robot. From my
Oh, there might be a little bit of lag, but can you hear
oh,
me?
I hope this isn't. How does it
Oh,
sound on there?
let me check the stream.
I can hear myself.
I sound fine on stream.
You sound fine on the street. Maybe it's just me. Oh no.
Oh no.
Uh,
Oh, he might have just lagged out. Oh, it's back.
Let me remove myself quickly, and
Well, hello chat. It seems I am alone for the time being. I'm kind of trying to be a little bit careful with my words, but how do I word that? I just don't want to be too deep into politics, I guess. Like, extreme politics, rather. Talking about politics is fine because religion and politics do intersect. And where I believe they intersect, I'm going to talk about it. But I just don't want to say anything wrong. That's kind of my worry when it comes to talking about making Hell nervous, like their stream or their chat. I don't want to say anything that comes off as weird or wrong or anything like that. Because I am having to, well, one words. I am trying to have a genuine conversation. You've been disconnected. Oh no. Let's see. Can't you join back through the link? If not, you might have to invite me to a new one. Let me try and sort this out. It'll only be a moment. Okay. I can go on whatever random spiel I want to in the meantime. It was a fair point. Agreed that the prosperity gospel is a problem with right-wing folks just now. You know, that's another thing I was going to bring up. Yes, I believe it is an issue on both sides, but you could make an argument that it is exacerbated when it comes to right-wing people, because I believe that would likely be true when it comes to right-wing having more of the structure that they were talking about. Because I was going to bring that up. Because, yeah, you could probably make a better point that right-wing has more of the hierarchy or all of that stuff. I just believe it isn't just one side, and we shouldn't try to force it onto one side. We should be noting that it is both, but you can also point out, hey, it's likely that it's more so this group than this one, while being accurate. Might run out of water, but that's okay. You're allowed to have opinions that we won't hold to your faith or politics. I'm not here to audit. Well, yeah, but I just want to be careful. I don't want to say anything and get like an internet mob on me or something. I'm kidding, obviously, but just got to be a little bit careful when it comes to politics, because you can always have some extremist on some side get mad at you. But I also don't want to hide my opinions or dismiss them, because even in my streams, if someone asks a question about politics, I'm going to tread lightly, but I'm still going to tell them my opinion and what I believe it says in the Bible. So I'm going to be as accurate as I possibly can, because no matter what, I'm going to hold my opinions, no matter if they're controversial per se or not. That's what I wanted to say. Because at the beginning of the conversation, I said I didn't want to bring up one of those examples because I felt it was a bit controversial, but I've also talked about the same thing on my stream when someone asked, so it's not really something I'm going to too terribly concern myself with. I just don't want to go deep into politics and get people mad at me, because I don't hold opinions on a lot of things when it comes to politics. Of course, as I said, faith and politics do intersect in a lot of ways. But some of the stuff, when you bring up terms or talk about certain things, I'm just not going to have the knowledge of. And that's going to be fine. And I'm going to tell you when I just can't say something, or what word am I looking for? Add to the conversation when it comes to something, because I just might not have the knowledge. Welcome back. Let's see if it works.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
So unfortunately, I had to use my phone because my laptop has decided the internet is not working anymore.
Oh,
no idea what's going on.
That's not fun.
It's very strange. But I might, if it changes back, then that will be how it is.
I mean, it sounds about the same.
So what did I miss during that? I think you were talking at one point about making Elle nervous.
I was just talking about, like, well, actually, I went over a few things, but just general remarks on my feelings about the conversation so far, about what I'm trying to avoid, what I'm trying to talk about, and just thinking through it, because I want to be genuine in the conversation and not say something terribly controversial and stuff like that. And there might be stuff I just don't have knowledge on when it comes to certain topics, because as I said, I'm not deeply political.
Well, it's fine. It's a casual conversation. Doing well so far. You've not come across as disingenuous. And to be honest, if at any point you just say, actually, I'm not very informed about that, that's fine. Like it's okay to not know about something. Like the ignorance isn't, oh yes, you're going to be put to death. Like it's just, you just you can just say. But no, yeah, it's all fine. What were we discussing? I heard you bring up making Elle nervous. And I would quite like to talk to them actually, because they are certainly.
Okay, we'll get to that.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Let's see.
But yeah, what were you saying just before I got booted out of the stream?
Well, you said something about something. I don't have good memory, so I don't remember exactly. But my response was it just sounded to me like you were describing prosperity gospels. And what I said while you were gone was, oh, I lost it. It just left me. Wow. Give me one moment.
I mean, whilst you're thinking, I suppose what we were just saying about the that was it, like pastors and stuff, like people from the like leadership of churches and such, and like the right and left divide. I suppose the trickiness that I have with sort of describing it as like an all sides thing, certainly in this climate, but sort of just in general, is that the whole point of one of those sides is to break
That's what I was going to bring up. I
Sorry?
believe
Yeah, go
that
ahead.
it is both sides, but what I was going to say is you do have an argument there where you can say it's more so a right-leaning issue, where I could agree with you on that mostly, because I do believe the right has more of an issue when it comes to stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying here, oh yes, there are no issues in left-wing circles. I mean, religion and left, I think, is an interesting conversation in and of itself. But my point is more the purpose of the left-wing, like, structure, movement, idea, whatever, is to break down unjust hierarchies and challenge inequality. Whereas in right-wing circles, that isn't seen as a problem to the same extent, and sometimes actively encouraged. Hence the predominance of conservative thought in these spaces. Like, there's not you've got like MAGA claiming to be religious and doing all this stuff that isn't very sort of traditionally Christian or whatever. You don't have the same like religious left movement to the same extent, because there is that contradiction in challenging inequality and sort of going against hierarchy, and then saying, well, hang on, I am the priest, I am the leader, I am this person that is now above all of you, which I think
I dictate your thoughts.
Yeah, exactly. Like, there's that sort of that discrepancy. But no, I think that I think I heard you say making hell nervous. It might be an interesting little segue to go on to. What's your position? I mean, I'm curious as to did you just sort of happen across them? Like, how did they get into your
oh boy, this is going to be a conversation. Ooh. Okay, let's start. 3 weeks ago, I was scrolling on my YouTube panel, just looking at stuff. I was bored, pretty much. And I saw this Making Hell Nervous, like, live stream. I was like, oh, cool. This is like a Christian faith, like, talking thing. Someone I can have fellowship with, someone I can talk to. This seems great. I'm going to join in this live stream, come hang out, talk to people. It sounds like a fun time. I go into the chat. There's some nice people. There's someone called Destroying Heaven's Confidence or something like that. And they were asking them questions about like the gospel or certain things. And I tried to reach out to them to get them to talk to me and have genuine conversation, because after everything, I felt like they weren't genuine like Christians. So we're going to get into this now. I was on there and I saw Q, which I didn't know they were a streamer at the time, in their chat talking about whatever, about how they were racist and this and that. I was like, wow, this is kind of a lot of allegations against these people. So I was like, do you have any documented evidence that I can look into so I can see how these guys are racist or anything like that? And if so, maybe I can get into a conversation with them and have genuine conversation about repentance, the gospel, stuff like that. And eventually, they didn't even have to give it to me, but I think they sent me something. I don't remember. But Dustin was in there, and he said something. He just got really mad at the chat because people were asking to get into the call and talk about things. And he started yelling at people in the chat. He started calling me and everyone else idiots. And he was saying, I don't care if what I did was wrong. I don't know if it was wrong, and I don't care. I'm going to keep doing it, which I was like, well, that's really unrepentant. And then he was like, I'm not even going to comment to tell you if what I did is true or not. I was like, okay, well, that's just admitting that you did something wrong or did something in general. So it was just enough for me to be like, there's something off about this, and the people there don't really care to correct it. So happened to yesterday. I've been getting their streams on my recommended for like a few days now, even though I didn't really engage with the first one. it was still bringing them up even after I like disliked their videos. I was like, okay. And yesterday I felt like I should hop in the stream. Maybe I could talk to them. And I got in there and Q was there. And I didn't know they were streaming until they put it in the YouTube chat. And I joined their stream. We had a little bit of conversation, not a ton. And they were able to get in there and have a little bit of conversation before they were kicked. But after they were kicked, it showed the ID for their join link for like only 2 seconds. So I backed up the video, let it play for 2 seconds, paused it, and I got in. And it said waiting for moderator to let you in. I was like, there's no way they're going to let me in here to let me talk. But out of somehow, some way, they let me in the conversation. And that's just how it all started rolling. And I was trying to be a little bit careful with my words because I know if I said something crazy from the chat or anything, they were definitely going to kick me out. So I was trying to get people, hey, send me links, send me what you want me to talk about. And I was bringing up biblical stuff of how I disagreed with what they were doing and mainly Dustin's behavior. And they kind of like went around all that stuff. We didn't really have much of a conversation, but I tried. And then they said, oh, it's after 9. We have to end. I was like, oh, okay. And then they just left.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like the average experience with that channel, as Ash says in the chat. If I can actually do it on my phone. They love banning people, and they're quite happy to boot you off at a moment's notice. For a show that claims to be about discussion and debate, they don't really like it that much. But no, it's just fascinating to me because obviously we. In our sort of left-wing circle, progressive, like obviously we had a problem with them sort of just upon hearing about 5 seconds of them speaking about stuff. But it's so fascinating and sort of eye-opening that yourself as just sort of a not really political Christian, apolitical-ish. You've got sort of just sort of stumbling across them, and after a few interactions, you've already sort of come to the correct conclusion that they are a group of poorly practicing Christians and bigots, basically. I mean, Dustin, I've spoken to him before, called me the M word. Q, another streamer called Raptor, they're black as well. They get called M words. Like every other slur under the sun.
I know it would have been a lot worse if he was there. That's the only reason I was able to get a little bit of conversation. If I get back in there, I want to talk about.
Well, sorry.
If I get back in there, I want to talk about their behavior and I want to bring up biblical stuff, get their like conversation about, number one, they brought up to me their dispensationalism and I didn't know what that was, but Raptor showed me that, and talk to them about the gospel and repentance because that's the biggest things. And I want to talk to them about their behavior because that's all going to tie in together. So that was my hope, but they said they'd message me and we'd get to that together Saturday and we'd have like this whole stream going over stuff. And I was like, that's not going to happen. 3 days later, 2 days later, whatever today is, I've still not gotten a response back over email, so it's probably not going to happen. But I was down to do it.
They're very change on the turn of a wind, pretty much. Like because I got some replies to things I sent to them ages ago in response to them. Like the host of the show, Jeremiah, he often just sort of changes his policy on that like all the time. He's claimed before they're never doing them again. They had people on recently. Like it's a bit of a mess, really. But I always sort of bring them up really because I bring them up now because they're a prime example of that sort of right-wing co-option of religion for their own like benefit. You've got a person like Dustin, who I'm sure you have now deduced is clearly a very questionable individual, bigoted, vitriolic, unpleasant to be around, can't have a conversation with anyone. The more you learn about his very online and just, open, like personal life, which is, I'm not going to repeat here, but just a mess, to be honest.
Yeah, like, they went over with me some of the stuff.
Yeah, no, exactly, right? So just clearly a horrendous human being. This person is permitted in their spaces, is a friend of all these people. He has not had any of his behaviors, but so Jeremiah claims, oh yes, well I've spoken to Dustin behind the scenes, but still calls him a friend and still he gets prime time slot on this channel,
which is why I brought up that Matthew verse the last stream.
Exactly, right. And this is permitted, but then these same people will pull up one line of the Bible and misconstrue it to claim that all gay people will be going to hell. Anyone
Oh, I
that,
didn't even know they thought that. I
yeah,
mean, it was
homophobic,
deducible, but
they've had very strange conversations about race mixing.
that's not the gospel.
Well, exactly, right. There's no, they don't care particularly about, they, for as much as they have regular Bible readings and stuff. Like, there's no.
If all gay people are going to hell, then everybody's going to hell. Period.
Well, it's just nonsense, they only and you've got we can look at the sociological reason that these people claim LGBTQ people are an issue, right? Like, it goes back to the division of labor, right? If you have a patriarchal society where men do this and women do this, and you've got the free labor of women in the house and raising kids and such, a relationship that's a gay one questions that. It says, well, hang on a minute, we don't have to actually live our lives by this code. And that in turn questions power, which then goes against the right-wing structure of society. The idea that hierarchy and power structures are good, and it's good to try and get on top of them. So then it's useful to have a cultural belief in something which claims that anyone who falls outside your structure of the family is sinful and deserves to be ostracized and punished and killed in society, which then wraps back around to people like Making Hell Nervous, who spend their life preaching against sin, i.e. whichever marginalized group they've decided they don't like. Yeah, as Ash says, they hate gay, trans, black people. I'd probably wager their views on disabled people aren't great either. Just anyone that's not them is quite right. And then Making Hell Nervous is the poorest version of Big Bang Theory. Sheldon is Tim, Jeremiah is Leonard, Ryan is Raj, and Dustin is Horowitz. It's Horowitz? I must admit, I've not watched Big Bang Theory. So
Yeah, I haven't either.
I'm sure I'd find it funnier if I'd seen it. But yeah, no, I wanted to get your sort of perspective on them, right? Because is this a good representation of your faith? Like, do you feel represented by how they?
No. Not at all. Not at all. With just the bare minimum I've learned, not at all.
Yeah. Well, it's just as I think most people would. I mean, I've got religious people in my family. I don't feel they're anything like this version. Making Hell Nervous version of Christianity, where you spend all your time on live streams moaning about gay people going to your church and stuff like that. Like, it's just pointless. But it's a prime example of how this sort of right-wing political interpretation of Christianity functions, right? Because as whilst we can sort of say, yeah, these guys are just a joke, right? They don't believe in anything. They don't actually really follow what they spend none of their time being good people. They just spend it being hateful online, right? But the function of this is that it isolates them from the actual sort of practice of what maybe Jesus did, puts them on a pathway where their principles are all just hating various marginalized groups and then aligning with the MAGA movement. Jeremiah openly says he voted for Trump, he'd do it again. Dustin's a big Trump supporter. They're very happy with a lot of the stuff Trump does, which benefits that right-wing structure. If you are supporting MAGA, even if it's just because, I'm a Christian and so is Trump, allegedly, you support the...
That's a whole other topic.
Yeah, exactly, right? But it supports that dominance of the wealthy. It supports corporations. The US military get an extra billion taken from schools and whatever else, right? Like, it all supports that same power structure, which is ultimately the reason they have this movement and such, because they want to maintain their power. They want to maintain this. And Ash makes a very sensible point in the chat again. The hate is core to what they're doing. It fuels them. Dustin doesn't just behave in the way he does because he's a vehement bigot. Obviously, it's part of it. He also has an addiction to being this negative, or having this behavior trait where he gets to be horrid to people and gets to lord it, be on top of a hierarchy of others. He gets to inflict negative actions upon others, be it through race or gender or sexuality. They enjoy being on the top of the hierarchy they've created. And so there's an element of, even though you can show them all the stuff, because I heard you on that stream, right? Like, I heard you quote the Bible and say, like, you know, this is not like how can you tolerate this when you claim to be a Christian and this is what it says? And they don't care, because the actual, you know, the Bible could say anything and they would still cling to this interpretation of it, because that's their prerogative. That's what they need to do in order to maintain the power structure that they enjoy having as per their right-wing worldview.
I enjoyed listening to that. You made a lot of good points.
Thank
a lot
you.
of good points.
My laptop is still, I don't know how my phone can have internet and my laptop can't. Like, it's very bizarre. It's also getting a bit hot, so we've still got a bit of time left. I may call this slightly shorter than I was intending, just because it's feeling warm in my hand at the moment. I don't want to leave it on something in case it just falls. But no, you know, making Elle nervous. I find as well the way they conduct themselves, like no humility, no, like you've got Jeremiah, who the host, right, like this person that puts themselves 101 certainly is one, Lasty. You know, Jeremiah presents himself as this like neutral, you know, thinking man, just a someone that has all the answers, has the knowledge. But the second there's any pushback, just like shuts down the whole show. He's ended streams before, like just click of a finger, like you midway through a sentence, stream just ends. Another black person actually, Stable, you know, great person. Yep. They were talking with Jeremiah, and they don't like what they're saying, what Sable's saying, so the stream just ends, just stops dead. You know, and it's fine. Like, you know, you can't, you know, tell someone, oh, you must stream, you must talk to us, right? But when you claim then, oh yes, well, I have these debates and they just don't do it honestly and such, and this is why I'm right, and this is why my interpretation's right.
And like, we're so open-minded, and we're so great, and we're not racist in the slightest.
Exactly, right? Like, and that he'll trot out the like, oh yes, well, my wife is actually black and Cuban, so therefore I can't be racist, in the same breath as claiming there's genetic differences and there's a hierarchy and such. Like it's just utterly
like one of the clips I saw, he said, well, I don't want to say this because I'm going to get clipped and people are going to do this and that, but black people are more genetically disposed to being louder. Like, how are you going to say that and then still follow it up with the sentence?
Exactly, right? Like, and this is a person that claims as well that they're you know, that they've ridden through a crowd of irrational haters, and it's like, just even thinking about that sentence, like genetic disposition to being loud, like it is just purely like garbage.
How much ego and pride do you have to believe all these people calling you out are just wrong? All of them.
Yeah. But then that's the trick of it, right? Because as well as being, you know, this sort of right-wing model, right, as well as being a thing they believe in, it also isolates them from everyone else around them, right? Because imagine like yourself, right? Like you've discovered this channel and within a few like weeks have realized they're just complete, you know, just
well,
not
the first day, but
yeah, first day, exactly, right? Like, you know, like 24 hours. But in doing so, that pushes the four of them further away from yourself, and you know, obviously the rest of sort of probably mainstream Christians, and towards more extreme pockets, you know, groups that will tolerate open racism, groups that do have conversations that revolve purely around hating various marginalized groups, which then enables the next set of steps towards an even further right position. You know, eventually you have entire churches that have been radicalized by MAGA, for instance, voting.
There's a racist church that exists right now. I saw it on Bryce Crawford's like video a few months back.
Yeah. Like, just what was that? Sorry, a racist church?
Yeah, they believe that black people aren't going to heaven, and they were a church.
Oh dear. Like, you know, just the same stuff as the slave days, right? Like they made all sorts of claiming the Bible had given them sanction to enslave black people and such. You know, it's the same stuff. Like they use the same things there, right? In service of capital, of power, of gaining wealth, they claim something is in the Bible which gives them sanction to do as they see fit. and it's a tale as old as time, really. And why I think the important thing to isolate is whilst identifying that a lot of religious people do say things like this sometimes in various degrees, it's that right wing, that conservative element, which I think is the important connecting thread between, you can pick out these issues across many religions, but it's not inherently the belief in a spiritual existence or whatever. It's the the idea in placing it in hierarchies and economic dominance and such.
It's their prejudices that then bleed over into their religious thoughts.
Yeah, and the two are linked, the prejudice and the right wing element. Because the prejudice, it's not as though no one has been left wing and had a thought of negative weight against someone different, right? But the critical juncture is what it's used for, its function. If you create the hierarchy and sustain it through societal tools like religion, which is ultimately something that people believe in, a cultural element of society, if you can make that connection, you can have tons of people believing in your hierarchy without even realizing it, which then, like Jeremiah, when he's on the stream saying that he thinks all, LGBTQ stuff is sinful, that is the tool for which the government, the Trump administration, can say, right, we're going to cut all funding for all LGBTQ programs across the country. We're going to censor any books which contain reference to what we've deemed inappropriate, when it's actually just, a gay person existing, a lesbian existing. We're going to say that pride is a political activity and can't be anywhere near certain buildings, which then stops it from being able to happen. And so you've massively prevented them any LGBTQ people from organizing in society and having a celebration. All these things bleed into each other and then allow for that social control, which then translates into the economic power that accompanies capitalism. Thank you, Ash, for your tech tips as well, tongue twister in the chat there. I do think I need to update because that's probably part of the issue. But no, on that point, I think, because you said that there's not that political, you don't have a political leaning and such, but you're able to recognize the problem with making our nervous, which to me sort of suggests there is that, maybe you don't like the term left wing, but there is that ability to recognize some of the, the same critiques of these hierarchical, ideas and such, right?
Yeah, because I don't agree with hierarchy to begin with. That's something that I've had a lot of conversations and talked about with a lot of different people, is having hierarchy gives a lot of issues, and giving one person the power, you have no way to check that person. If everyone has an even layer of power or understanding, everybody can make sure that someone else is in check and not doing something wrong or bad, etc.
No, exactly. A society should be structured in a way that allows for everyone to be able to check each other and such, right? As you said, if there's one person who's just above everyone else, which
is how I believe the early church was to begin with. You have 12 people in a home. Nobody was above the other person. People were just checking each other. You have Paul going from church to church saying, hey, you're doing this, change it. If you have one issue with one person, bring it to them, then bring it to the rest, and then bring it to the rest. And if they still don't go, then treat them as a Gentile and a tax collector and get them out. That's the verse I brought up with making hell nervous as well.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose the only thing, the two things I suppose I would say, one is, I suppose God would be the hierarchy that is then pointed to, right? The reason a lot of
it would be the Bible that you would go to as the logical next step in that system.
Yeah, but then that's also still you've placed the the Bible, and it depends how you interpret it, right? You've got some who would say it's a reference point, a guiding thing. Others would say it's a matter to adopt entirely. Some would say it's the the word of. Some might even say, well, it's what men have written, claiming it's the word of God, right? Some would say that it's a conduit almost. No, a good quote there. But the sort of that would still be one of the critiques some might make. And then a second one, because I do agree that hierarchy is something we should be challenging and such. There's a difference between an unjust hierarchy and one that does have some justification. Like, I think that the point as well of like left-wing discourse is this criticality, this sort of analysis of society, because there's still some hierarchies that are somewhat useful, right? Like, you still need to have a recognition that, like, say, if you're teaching someone like how to do maths, one of those people has a power advantage over the other, and so for the benefit of the lesson would have higher authority.
I think I need to explain my position a little bit better, because I don't believe that I really did it justice. Let me see how I can explain it.
Go ahead.
How do I want to do this? Because it's not really church communism. That was funny though. But it's more so like you have everybody, and anybody can say, hey, if this person in quote unquote power, let's say a minister or something, hey, you did this wrong or this was wrong, there has to be some sort of hierarchy and general understanding of something before you can be like, well, I got to check you. Because if you don't have some above like hierarchy something, then there's nothing to fall back to say, well, you're wrong about this. It's just one man for themselves, and this other person like, hey, you're wrong, but you're wrong, but you're wrong, but you're wrong. So I don't believe it would really apply to more than just churches. I believe in, again, the house church concept where you have 12 people, you have someone ministering and stuff like that. So you check each other with the Bible, because that would be the hierarchy that would be in place. Is the Bible, it would be above all the interpretations. And of course, you would also have to have a centralized interpretation to go along with that.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like,
it's very
like
complicated.
Said, like it wasn't, like Ash said, it's not like you were sort of.
Well, no, I know it was a joke, but I think I needed to explain it a little bit better.
Sure. But like the, the idea that there's a hierarchy isn't the inherently bad thing. It's just that like the purpose of said hierarchy. You're teaching others because you want them to have the same tools as you, right? Like you're teaching kids to read and write because you want them to share that power with you. The power of being able to read is profound in a world of words. Therefore, it's in the interest to teach the next generation the ability to process these words so that they too can participate. In the same way that the person that's read the Bible the most is well placed to teach others because it's useful to have them all learning it and such. And in a system of checks and balances where people are invested in democracy and in their communities and would be able to engage in it democratically, said person, let's say the priest here at a certain congregation is a devious one and decides to put in lines like, your priest is worth more than your following, and the priest should receive twice the salary of other people in the community.
And your priest is a higher authority than the Bible. So priest is the ultimate authority. Therefore, priest is the best, or something like that.
Exactly, right? Like, if that happened in a functioning community, you'd be able to say, hang on a minute, this is a bit questionable. We don't quite agree with this. Check it with other people. And then that priest is no longer given the responsibility of teaching. But in our society right now, because we've not got that, because we're in a right-wing world, not a left-wing one,
I get more.
Not only are there priests with this disproportionate power, televangelist is a position you can get, and excuse me, sorry, televangelist is a position you can have, and like there's plenty of priests who are multimillionaires, like people, religious leaders who have become marketing figures who essentially are brands that can not only appeal to their congregation, but their congregation becomes their YouTube audience or their, the viewers of Fox News, like Fox Channel. So I think that wherever we look, there's an important element to bring back to the political, the social, which, because whilst I agree that with what you're saying, like if religious people believe in sort of principles of like spirituality and stuff, there's healthier ways that allow for power to pool equally and such, and there not to be a massive power differential.
And you bringing that up helped me really formulate my ideas better, because now I have a better understanding of all of that. So thank you for that.
That's all right. Power conversation, huh? It can do amazing things. Ash says, I should never see a priest wearing gold pinky rings and driving BMWs.
I was actually going to bring up a comment by them. They said step number 1 in America is to remove churches' tax-free status. I believe that is a good step, but at the same time, it would be difficult, but have some way to know, are these churches using it for themselves, personal gain, or are they using it actually for the church? Are they taking the money for personal gain, or are they using it for the church?
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? Like, I think tax in America is such a, like the fact that corporations like basically exist as pharaohs at this point, right? Like you've got Amazon owning like 20% of all grocery stores and sales and such, and then you've got a cost of living crisis where people aren't actually getting enough to eat and pay rent.
I would bring up a certain company, but I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna get a target on my back or something.
I'm sure Jeff Bezos isn't listening along, but I'll make up a corporate name next time if that's.
Well, I'm not talking about them. I'm just saying a certain company out there. You say their name and they just know,
Maybe, yeah, but no, like corporations, have tons of power, and for as much as they'll claim, we paid X amount in tax, like they're still clearly atop a very, very narrow hierarchy. And a lot, I think the reason Ash is saying this, like churches, like if you're commanding that much wealth and it's just sat there in the organization and disappearing inevitably into certain members of a congregation's pockets, like that isn't given back to the community. That's not why the tax-free status was given, right? Where everyone, it's tricky because obviously a lot of people, a lot of communities would definitely rely on their churches for some of that. Like I think certainly in inner city areas, there's a gap because the welfare state doesn't get the funds it needs, and you've got big gaps in like housing benefits, education, amenities. Churches are doing a lot of that work, but that is very much a plaster over a systemic problem. It's not like the solution can be relying on the church. It needs to be, society should not be in a position where people are in poverty and people are facing these hardships. In the long run, obviously, maybe this is safe for a different debate or discussion about like a wider sort of social makeup.
Ash just brought up something really good in the chat.
Why is my thing not loading? Which one do you want to bring up?
Churches don't even help the community. Look up the saga of the woman calling every church in her state, asking if they could help her get baby formula for her child, and they all said no.
Yeah.
That's an important thing to bring up too.
Yeah, exactly, right? Because that's another issue when you have this power structure of, the church as like an institution. People within the church have their own ideologies and beliefs, especially when they've inherited decades, centuries even, of conservative discourse. And rather than help the needy person, the person with that pressing need, they think, oh, well, you're immoral because you had sex before marriage, you gave birth to a child outside of marriage, you're LGBTQ, you're black, even depending on where you are, right? Like, so they don't, they see a moral failing on many of the people around them, and refuse them the help that they ought to be given their status as community group. And so the reason you take the tax-free status is because you say, okay, well, church, Christianity is such a broad thing that it's not enough to, like, you can't, some churches are doing different things to others, so it's not like a universal thing. And it's not whatever, like, I don't think, we live in different times, I think, as well. But it's one that I think would come alongside many other sort of economic reforms. You need to shift away from the right-wing model on the whole, which is going to be a broader thing than just looking at religion. Ash says, luxury car for me, no baby formula for thee. Well, indeed. and they're driving nice things than BMWs too. They're driving like proper
Private jet,
private jets, helicopters,
and that's millions.
mansion complex. Like BMWs are what, sports cars? They're driving like Ferrari, like supercars and stuff, right? Like Koenigsegg's and Ferraris and stuff. But it's fairly astounding that I think the effect of the the decades and decades of televangelism and right wing consolidation of many of these groups can be sort of seen to link us back to making hell nervous. It can be seen in groups like that, right, where they just have no conception almost of the just sheer hypocrisy and like contradiction of how they go about their lives. Even if you ignore all the rancid bigotry and incorrectness, like even if you ignore the fact they don't have a cogent argument about anything, like a person like Dustin, who is just so unpleasant to be around, even towards them, right? Like he argues with them when they're just like by themselves, they argue as well, right? Like he's just an unpleasant human being.
They argue by themselves?
Yeah, well, they don't always do call-ins. They often just sit and discuss their lives and stuff, and they inevitably argue. Like they often bicker over nothing. Even Tim, Tim is not Tim, sorry, Ryan is he was gay and then has come to the Lord and repented or whatever. Clearly like a victim of conversion therapy or abuse or whatever, and is just stuck with people that are hateful towards his sexuality and stuff. Was it on the most recent stream of Q's that they're asking Jeremiah, should Ryan be stoned? And Jeremiah not only won't say no, but is basically all but saying, yes, his views and behavior should see him face this punishment. And it's like, this is what you're saying to your friend's face. You're saying this to his face.
That was the last stream.
There we go, right? Like it's just awful. And if you're treating your friends like this, like what on earth how is this your model for the rest of society, right? Like it's just terrible. But this is sort of a point, like they have such adherence to hierarchy and to power structures and to putting themselves on top that they'll say and do anything pretty much. And it's sad because these are people whose lives and minds are being wasted on this garbage.
Yeah, that was the most recent stream though, and he did say that. I think he said no, based on this viewpoint, I wouldn't do it. And then I think he said something like, "But if we were on an island and something."
Yes, that was it. Yeah, he said he was the Weasley like get out of jail free, where it's like, well, I'm not the ultimate authority, so it's not for me to do. But I totally would if I was. So the committee defeats the point of like saying that. The obvious answer you'd say is no, because it's wrong to kill and stone people, and you'd think a Christian might have some concept of that, but apparently not. They are a fascinating group, and I'm very pleased that the Christians who happen across it also have this just are sort of astounded by how rancid they all are. Just shameless as well in how they behave.
Yeah.
I've got my phone is rapidly running out of battery, so I reckon we've got another 5 or 10 minutes. I'll say to the chat from now if you've got any questions for either of us, then start putting them in now, and I can sort of pull them up. But there's I suppose I wanted to ask actually, because obviously we touched on Trump a little bit earlier. Where's your sort of how do you you say you're not quite political, you say you're quite Christian. Where are you? Where's your perspective with your president, commander-in-chief?
I was gonna say I'm not well versed enough, to be honest. I see a lot of news from both sides. I believe both sides can also be biased in a lot of their representation.
When you say both sides, which two sides are you referring to?
Like the left and the right, pretty much.
Yeah, but like when you say like media, you say like news from both sides. Like what would you say is like a an example of these sort of.
I just happen across like posts where people are talking about a certain issue, or people are talking about something Trump did, just stuff like that. Where just I'm seeing posts where people are talking about his either good decisions or bad decisions. I couldn't even give an example of either because I just don't follow it at all.
Well, like, you know, it had to be like specific, like the war in Iran, the ICE attacks on.
Yeah, I've seen the
American
ICE
people.
attacks. I don't think I saw anything about Iran.
Well, the fact that they're bombing Iran at the moment, you know, like.
Well, yeah, I know what's happening, but I haven't seen any coverage on it. But I have heard that it's happening. I don't know where I heard it from. But what's another one? Another one is his like laws that he's putting in place.
Like what? Sorry.
Another one would be like the laws that he's trying to put in place, or stuff that's passing.
Defunding education,
defunding health,
environmental regulations, healthcare cuts, ending foreign aid.
The new disease that's going around.
Yeah, well, you know, RFK Jr., who doesn't believe basically in modern science, in charge of public health and such. But you know, like, I mean, surely there's enough there to see that even if you aren't maybe as fond of some of the people saying he's bad, there's clearly a reason that there's not all the criticism. You know, ultimately the guy's like, for as much as one can say, you know, anyone has a bias, right? Like, it's not as though we're sort of detached from human emotion and such. Like, we are inherently in possession of our biases, but rather than sort of saying, oh, well, one side believes this, one side believes that, we've got to be in the middle. There's got to be this, like, recognition that some ideas are bad and one's critical. Sometimes we have to acknowledge that some criticisms are, you know, there's a reason that people are saying, well, this person's bad.
And I get that point, but I usually see it in passing. Like, I see a random post here or a random post there, and I don't research it because I'm not really into politics, as I said. So it's just not something I have knowledge on. If I looked into it, I could probably give you a direct stance of how I feel about it, but it's just not something I've looked into.
Yeah, I mean, I can see why, but like, don't you think that there should be a bit, some sort of compelling to do a little bit of, not like, so like spend hours and hours poring over it, but like, the war in Iran, right? Like, you don't have to know all the dates and figures and such, but we can say just unequivocally that bombing schools and bridges and random Iranian things is bad, and it's a disgrace that there's just a death toll that's going up and up and up, and the president is just continuing doing it, right?
Like, I saw a post about that.
But you know, like, there's sort of like a if you're not aware of them, that's fine. But like, we're not fine. But like, if you're not aware of them, then, you know, whatever. But like, it's still, especially, I guess, from a like religious standpoint, like in my mind, there's something like an alarm bells ringing for me if like this is just going on and it's just like another day. It's like if it was the other way around, right? Like, if one day a missile was dropped on an American civilian area and like a school's blown up, like, it would be, so there wouldn't be any question of whether or not it's right and wrong. So in my mind, like, the same thing applies here, right? Like, Iranian kids and Iranian people are of the same value of everyone else, and therefore should also it should also be a disgrace for Trump to, you know, any administration to be doing this. And then just before you can get into the thousands of other things that the man's done, and the administration, you know, the right-wing government and such.
Yeah, I can see that.
And so that's why, for me, I balk a little bit when someone says, as you did a minute ago, I see the left, there's bias on both sides, because, like, even if the left-wing person that's being sort of gestured towards is like super biased, like, there's no equivalent like action there, is there? Like, one action is clearly far worse than the other, and so even the hypothetically biased person is not, you know, it's not equivalent. But, you know, I can, you know, again, there's a whole other conversation to be had about the frustration in politics about sides. I would stress that the left-wing media and Democrat Party are to the left, obviously, of the Republicans and things like Fox News, but it's very much like, I'm not a Democrat and I'm far more left-wing than them, because, you know, there's clearly there's a whole conversation about economics and such, and where you place political parties. And I think it's very important to stress that these terms are both subjective and malleable, and that it's always important to speak about the actions and such for things.
Yeah. I'm thinking about it right now. You got me thinking about stuff.
But yeah, because it's important to like, words have meanings and are malleable and such, but there's also like a reason that like left-wing criticism of Trump is so fierce and harsh, because it needs it quite urgently. But Ash says in the chat, I call myself a leftist, but I'm registered as a Democrat, so I get all their invites and meetup info. The goal is to bring in more left, and it's one that's shared by a lot of people, right? Like, it's not even like the term Democrat is so broad. You've got so many people in that party, and people refer to Democrats, like everyone from like the higher ups and presidential candidates and presidents to some activist on the street, like ground level, doing things in the community, but through the party's infrastructure. So it's all quite broad, I think, and in need of that nuance and ability to be flexible with discussion. But in terms of what you said about like the left-right coverage and such, like, I think it's important to sort of firmly say, well, yeah, the right-wing stuff is toxic, and there needs to be a shift to the left fairly urgently for any of a dozen reasons. My phone is now, I've got a little what's it, like, my battery's it's got like a different color now, so I will have to bring this to a bit of a conclusion. Thank you, Faith, for coming on to the channel.
It was a very informative conversation.
Sorry?
It was a very informative conversation.
Oh, thank you. Well, it was nice having it with you as well. It's nice to speak to people that are able to sit down and chat about something. I can only apologize for how atrocious my technology and devices have been. I mean, I don't quite know what's going on. Headphones didn't work properly. Laptop decided to crash and boot me out of my own call. Phone's overheating. So I'll have to sort something out, because I can't be having people on if I'm barely even able to host the stream. But yeah, no, it's been a nice chat. We'll have to do it again at some point. I don't know. You said Saturdays when you're speaking to Making Elle nervous, or was it last Saturday? Or
is it likely? No, but
well, you never say never. They are incredibly flippant, and you might end up catching him at a certain point. Equally, there's plenty of other opportunities. I'm sure we can talk again at some point. Hopefully, if you've got, feel free to send anyone my way. I'm happy to talk to. Like I said, 80. I've done 80 of these conversations. I'm approaching a century of these conversations. So
either way, if I don't get the conversation with them, I feel like I've been put into some really interesting communities that will help me open my mind a little bit when it comes to stuff that I'm not well versed in or have a lot of knowledge with. Like this conversation as well. I hadn't thought about some of these things before, haven't really refined my positions on some of them, and this conversation has helped me with at least 2 to my knowledge, might be more, but it's been really informative.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad to have helped in that regard. Right, I'm going to end the live stream now, though. Thanks everyone for listening. And I'll have to catch you all, wherever I do the next one, whenever I can sort out whatever's going on with my stuff. Thanks again, Faith, and take care all.
See ya.